Welcome to the HSE Schools Anti-Bullying Training Webinar. My name is Greg Aiken. I'm a behavior specialist with HSE Schools. Prior to that, I worked with the HBM Co-op and as a school psychologist. Yeah.
And I'm Jeff Foudy. I'm a school psychologist for HSE School System, and prior to that I worked in Iowa as a school psychologist as well as several other school districts in the state of Indiana.
It's our hope you'll find this training useful whether you're an employee, a volunteer, or a visitor in our schools. It takes all of us working together to keep our schools safe and special places for students to learn and grow. The Hamilton Southeastern Schools Board of School Trustees prohibits bullying in our school corporation. Specific anti-bullying policy and rules can be found in each school student handbook and posted on the school's website. We'll now cover the major points for staff and volunteers. Remember, if you hear about poor behavior, even if it's off school grounds or on social media, you should report it. If you see something, do something. You'll hear these words several times throughout this training. This may involve intervening, but will almost certainly involve reporting poor behavior to a teacher, a staff member, administrator, or counselor. If you're not sure who to report suspected bullying to, go directly to the school principal where the behavior occurred. If you're not sure who to contact, you can also report the incident to the HSC Superintendent of Schools at the admin building, and we can make sure the issue is addressed. Reporting of bullying behavior does not take the place of reporting child abuse or neglect to Department of Child Services.
And Greg, you can report incidents of bullying confidentially directly to your administrators through our Text-to-Tip program. And we expect our entire school community to respond appropriately to reports and retain the right to discipline individuals who fail to respond or who make false reports.
So remember that reporting of facts, the who, what, when, where, and why is important to assist administrators in conducting a thorough investigation. Taking note of the student exhibiting bullying behaviors, the target of those behaviors, and witnesses is extremely important to the investigative process. Some major points for staff and volunteers to remember. If a report of suspected bullying is substantiated through an investigation, then the school district shall take appropriate intervention and responses as consistent with policies and procedures. And HSE schools will take prompt and effective steps reasonably calculated to stop the bullying, remedy the bullying, and prevent the bullying from recurring. It's our responsibility to help and support the target of the bullying and to also help the student exhibiting the bullying behaviors to turn to a more positive and productive path. And it's imperative that the whole school community work together to keep our schools bully-free. Our parents play a key role in this effort as well.
Now that we've got the dry handbook policy stuff out of the way, we're going to focus this next session on some practical information and hopefully answer many of the questions you may have about your role in addressing bullying or other types of poor behavior that you might observe while working in or visiting our schools. So some frequently asked questions include, what if I'm not sure if a student's behavior is bullying or just bad behavior? Well, administrators have been trained to make that determination. Your responsibility is to report any instance you observe that you believe could be bullying behavior. What if I witness poor behavior that I do not believe is bullying behavior? Should I still report it? Staff must use professional judgment on what level of poor behavior should be reported to administration. Teachers have well-crafted classroom management plans to correct and discipline students who make poor choices. Remember, if you believe it could be bullying behavior, you must report it.
Jeff, I think that's an important point in that good discipline practices in schools are the best prevention for bullying.
That's a good point. Now we're going to move to some myths. One of the difficulties in dealing with bullying behaviors is that there are many myths about how to address the countless scenarios where these behaviors can occur. So hopefully by understanding some of these myths, you'll be more equipped to intervene and support the targets of bullying behaviors and stop poor behavior from reoccurring. All right, one myth is if students laugh or smile when they're teased by others, they're okay with it.
That'd be false. No one can predict how any other person takes a put down. Sometimes people smile or laugh because it's less embarrassing than crying or getting into a confrontation. Another myth is that some people deserve to be bullied because they bring it on themselves.
And that's false. No one ever deserves to be bullied or never asks for it. Oftentimes, bullying behavior targets people who are different in some way, and being different is no reason to be bullied. Bullying is a normal part of growing up.
That's false. Getting teased or picked on, pushed around, threatened, harassed, insulted, and abused is not normal. The best way for students to deal with a bully is to fight back or get even.
And that's false as well. Fighting can result in students getting hurt, getting in trouble, and it only makes things worse. So we want our students to be assertive, not aggressive or passive. The best way for students to deal with bullying is to ignore it.
That's false. Ignoring mistreatment seldom solves the problem and can have a negative effect on students. And again, we want our students to learn to be assertive, not aggressive or passive. People who are bullied will get over it.
And that's false. Bullying behavior can hurt for a long time. Some students have dropped out of school because of being bullied. Others have become so sad or afraid or depressed that they've hurt themselves or others, and it's a serious problem. Sometimes bullying behaviors may help the child stand up for himself or herself.
That's false. We do want to teach our students to stand up for themselves without experiencing the negative effects of bullying behavior. There's no setting where bullying behaviors are helpful.
And the last couple myths. I shouldn't intervene because I don't have the skills or training.
That would be false. We expect all adults to intervene in situations where students are exhibiting poor behavior. It doesn't take any special training or skills to stop poor behavior and report it to a counselor, administrator, or other designated staff member. And finally, if I intervene, it will only add fuel to the fire and result in increased bullying.
And that's false. It's only more likely that the bullying and other inappropriate behaviors will increase without adult supervision. Indiana Code defines bullying for schools. Bullying behavior is intentional. It's meant to cause physical, emotional, or social harm. Bullying also creates an environment where the targeted student feels uncomfortable or unsafe. This law calls the sense of fear a hostile school environment. Bullying prevention research calls this an imbalance of power between the targeted student and the bullying student. Now, all three of these characteristics make this type of peer abuse bullying. To simplify the way we remember the definition of bullying, as well as when we are identified behaviors as bullying, think of a three-legged stool. For a behavior incident to be labeled as bullying, all three legs kind of have to be in place. And the first leg, the incident or behavior, is unwanted and deemed as aggressive.
The second leg would then be that it's repeated or has the potential for repeated behavior.
And finally, there's a power imbalance, either perceived or real, between the two students in question. That third leg, that power imbalance, is important when understanding if this incident is truly a bullying incident. Remember, your duty is to report the behaviors, and a trained administrator will determine whether or not it's a bullying behavior or not. Bullying terminology is ever evolving. The next slide kind of contains the most common terms associated with bullying prevention work. One of the terms is a target. What's a target?
That would be the victim or the student who's on the receiving end of the bullying behavior.
Okay. And then a student exhibiting bullying behavior.
That would be the student who was reported as displaying the bullying or inappropriate behavior.
Okay. And then the witness.
And that's the majority of the students in the situation probably, and those are the students that observe what's happening but may or may not take any action.
Okay. And those are the three terms that we'd like to use when we talk about the different people involved in a bullying situation. The Indiana Department of Education has identified 4 categories of bullying, and these are physical, verbal, social, relational, and electronic or written communication.
I think the physical and the verbal are fairly self-explanatory. The social relational would include activities that might have a negative impact on a student's social status or peer relationships, and then includes rumors or exclusion or manipulation, whereas electronic and written communication might include cyberbullying and collective or group note writing, et cetera.
And this slide talks about the physical bullying and it provides examples. Now, research shows, as you know, that boys are more often the targets of bullies and also the bulliers of physical bullying.
The verbal bullying tends to include saying mean things that might involve teasing or name-calling, sexual comments, inappropriate sexual comments, or taunting.
Then social relational bullying. This is typically, the research shows that it typically includes girls more as the target and the bullier, and can include things like isolation, embarrassing people, and spreading rumors.
And then electronic bullying or written bullying, which are becoming more common means of bullying, including cyberbullying, takes place through written messages, various forms of electronic technology, text messaging or emails, rumors sent by email or posted on social networking sites, and embarrassing pictures or videos, websites, fake profiles.
The most common question that comes up is, well, is this bullying? You know, is this a bullying incident, or is it just conflict? And so it's critical to understand that not every aggressive or harmful act is bullying, though every aggressive or harmful act still is serious and requires intervention. So proper training and understanding of what is bullying and what's not is critical. And it might help to refer to your school's policy on violence and hazing and gangs, harassment and stalking, so that you know the definitions between the difference between those and bullying. This next section discusses characteristics and potential risk factors of students that may be prone to exhibiting bullying behaviors. I know you have a few things to say about that.
This slide has some characteristics of students that may be prone to exhibiting the bullying behavior. Supports and programming for students that have these characteristics are critical as you're developing a comprehensive bully prevention program in your building. Our PBIS, or Positive Behavioral Intervention and Support Program, is designed to provide proactive strategies to help students who turn from the bullying behaviors. Research can also give us some interesting, helpful developmental insights about bullying behavior. There are gender differences. For example, boys are more likely to bully than girls.
Boy bullies are more likely to be physically assaultive and injure victims.
Girl bullies are more likely to engage in relational types of aggression that include teasing or ridicule or rumor spreading. There are also age differences. Bullying tends to increase with age.
And it peaks in middle school.
And physically aggressive acts tend to decrease, but verbal abuse tends to remain more constant over time. So kids that exhibit bullying behaviors also tend to engage in other risky and violent behaviors into adulthood, and you can read what's on your screen. Some examples are abusing alcohol and drugs into adolescence and adulthood, getting into fights or property vandalization, dropping out of school, lower grade point averages, test scores, poor work habits, etc.
Greg, this next section we're going to talk about targets of bullying and some of the warning signs sometimes you can see.
We have passive targets, which is the most common type, and these are students that tend to appear more anxious or insecure and really don't demonstrate that assertiveness or ability to defend themselves, and they may be described by teachers or parents or staff members as shy and quiet, poor social skills. So it's important to remember that friendships and positive peer interactions serve as protective factors for this group of students.
Sure. And then you've got the provocative targets, those who are more hot-tempered, volatile, restless, anxious, and they might retaliate with aggressive behavior when provoked. Greg, anyone can be a target of bullying. However, according to the National Education Association survey, educators reported that bullying based on a student's weight, gender, perceived sexual orientation, and disability were of most concern in their school. It's important to be aware that these student populations may be at higher risk for bullying and develop a support or programming to ensure safety.
Another important step might be to survey your school community to determine the student population that's high risk to be the targets of bullying.
It's also important to note that some students with disabilities have special needs that make them more vulnerable to becoming a target of bullying behaviors. And it's particularly important to be observant of students with special needs. And also, students displaying poor behaviors towards special needs students lack the understanding of the challenges that these students face. So intervention is especially important in those settings.
And awareness, because I think this population of students is probably most at risk because of the lack of peer support. And may have more difficulty processing some of those cues in social situations.
Yep, that's a good point. So helpful signs for teachers, school staff, and parents to watch for in their students. If a student's exhibiting any of these warning signs you see on the screen, it's recommending that the students be referred to the school counselor. Now, the effects of bullying are detrimental to a student's success in school and can potentially negatively impact success in life, and we've talked a little bit about that, and you have. There can be a long-term effect on the target as well. Greg, we've talked about effects of bullying, but the next slide talks about the effects on targets who have been bullied. They are more likely to experience depression, anxiety, increased feelings of sadness and loneliness, loss of interest in activities they enjoy. And these issues tend to persist into adulthood.
It's also important to remember that witnesses are a group of students that have observed the bullying incidents, and this group of students are oftentimes overlooked when providing intervention supports. Students that observe bullying have been linked to risky behaviors as well as decreased attendance, low school connectedness. Well, now let's talk about strategies for prevention of bullying behavior. This slide contains a brief overview of some of the components within a comprehensive bully prevention and intervention program, and you can read the slide. I think one of the critical things, Jeff, is to make sure that we're building empathy towards other students, using teachable moments, looking for opportunities we can empower students. An effective bully prevention requires the awareness of the entire school staff. So consistent supervision and reporting protocols are essential to maintain a safe school environment.
Yeah, Gray, I want to point out how important that cafeteria staff, bus drivers, custodians, parent volunteers, just those extra people that interact with those students on a day-in, day-in basis are to this whole process.
And as we've mentioned, the state of Indiana recently passed the new legislation with tougher anti-bullying laws, and this new legislation will hold school administrators and members of their staff accountable to how they respond to bullying when it occurs. It's important, obviously, to know how to recognize it, which we've talked about, and the correct protocol for reporting an incident in your school.
Many times bullying incidents occur outside the classroom setting in less structured, less supervised kind of areas, such as the hallway, cafeteria, restrooms, and things like that. So everybody, all staff should be aware and recognize bullying behaviors. And because teachers spend such a high percentage of time in their day in the classroom, teachers, instructional aides, substitutes, parent volunteers have considerable interaction with students. Therefore, they have a considerable impact on bullying. And here's some things that they can do.
So effective classroom management will always contribute to a positive learning environment. The positive, respectful climate you create will also deter bullying behaviors. Daily teaching, modeling, emphasizing HSE character skills for success, give students a basic framework for the development of good character.
And many teachers are well-trained and experienced in intervening when students exhibit negative behaviors in the classroom. They do it on a day-in, day-in basis. Remaining calm, respectful, and supportive are strong components of any effective intervention. And just a note to substitute teachers, stepping into another teacher's classroom can be very difficult. Getting up to speed on procedures and protocols can sometimes be a daunting task. So allow for adequate time when you arrive to ensure that you understand the bullying incident and reporting protocols and timetables, as well as other safety and emergency-related procedures.
Students who would not normally act out in a classroom under the close supervision of a teacher may find the unstructured setting of the cafeteria an opportunity to bully others. And as food service professionals, you are in contact with the students on a daily basis and can witness both positive peer interactions and incidents of peer maltreatment. So remember that while you're performing your job, you're also a role model. How you interact with the students helps to create a positive, caring environment in the cafeteria. Kids are watching you, so I think as staff members, all staff members, we need to pay attention to that and be aware of that. So it's important to know the difference between peer conflict, other isolated incidents of peer maltreatment, and bullying, which is an unwanted act of aggression that's a repeated act, demonstrating a real or perceived imbalance of power between the bully and the target, It's recommended that you discuss with your supervisor how to report an incident when you observe one. Don't expect the target of the bullying to be able to stop the incident by themselves. They definitely need your help.
And Greg, an often overlooked location is the bus, and students begin in their day of their educational experience on the bus. So they look to the bus driver to determine the limits of acceptable behaviors. So consistency in maintaining a respectful environment on the bus can deter a number of negative behaviors. So once you've had an opportunity to communicate your behavioral expectations with the students, review them often. The combination of modeling positive behaviors and reminding students that maintaining a safe and respectful environment is your top priority will help them self-monitor their behaviors. So it's recommended that the bus drivers review intervention and reporting protocols with your school corporation's Director of Transportation and other drivers. So being confident in dealing with negative behaviors, including bullying behaviors, will increase your effectiveness and your authority.
And Jeff, I think that's critical, being confident in your ability and having a plan if you see bullying behavior, knowing what to do. So hallways and common areas are another area of concern. It's recommended that as many staff as possible supervise passing periods in the halls. Research shows that a strong adult presence will help deter potential peer maltreatment, and it allows staff to remain aware of repeated acts such as bullying.
And hallway supervision is an excellent time also to interact positively with students, model positive school culture and characteristics. There's no greater fundamental step to keeping schools safe than adult supervision.
Always try to remain calm and respectful when you're intervening in the hallway, but make sure you can identify the students involved. This is sometimes more difficult in the hall versus a classroom setting, but it's important for effective follow-up once the incident has been reported.
So remember,
please take the time to make sure you are completely comfortable in your understanding of what defines a bullying incident and the correct way to intervene and report one. Your awareness and effectiveness will help stop bullying as it occurs, and it will reduce the likelihood of future incidents.
So the HSE Board of School Trustees adopted a Character Education Committee's mission statement and 9 character skills for success to promote the development of good character in our students. And you see these all over the schools as you walk through them. So focusing on consistent quality time teaching students what to do rather than what not to do is time well spent. Good behavior should be recognized, rewarded, and expected, and that's really what the Positive Behavior Supports Plan is all about.
Right. And a committee of students, teachers, and administrators, staff, parents, community members chose these 9 skills from surveys collected from all students in grades 5 through 8. The students played a key role in creating student-friendly definitions for each skill. Regular review of the skills provides a solid framework for the development of good character in a positive school environment.
Greg, we've talked about the PBIS program several times. Do you want to kind of explain a little bit about that and the structure?
I think our PBS programs in all of our schools provide an organized and proactive process to both support students with behavioral struggles and encourage school-wide positive behavior. And it fits with the RTI model that helps to intervene early with students with academic problems.
Yep.
And I think it addresses both prevention as well as early intervention. In review, let's all do our part in making HSE schools an anti-bullying zone. Remember, you must intervene and report any instances of possible bullying behaviors to the school administrator. So when you see something, do something.
Yeah, Greg, that's easy for me to remember. I like that phrase, when you see something, do something. So intervene by separating the students involved.
Get their names, but don't question students in front of other students.
Report the incident following your school's guidelines.
The students can then be questioned individually.
Don't try to resolve the incident on the spot.
And don't assume that students can work it out without adult help. Adult intervention is a critical, I think, support for students.
Absolutely. This concludes our HSE anti-bullying webinar, and we hope it was beneficial for you as we know it will be for our students. So thank you for your time and effort in making our schools a special place for students to learn and grow. So remember,
when you see something, do something.